phenomena should be done in the following manner. Here phenomena does not refer to the Dharma. The English term phenomena could be translated into the term Dharma in Sanskrit. Dharma refers not necessarily to spiritual practice, but it refers to all existent things. So here the term phenomena refers to all existent things. So when we talk about selflessness of phenomena, we are taking the phenomena as the subject, and we are refuting the existence of a self on that phenomena. In other words, self is refuted on the object phenomena. So, in order to refute the self of that phenomena, you must first understand what is that self which is refuted on the phenomena. So here the self of person refers to the point that normally when any external or internal phenomena appears to us, we do not see this as an expression of our own mind, as an aspect of our mind. We tend to see the external object as physical form, etc., as having a mode of existence from their own side. Even though the phenomena is in the nature of the mind, but we do not see the phenomena as being in the nature of phenomena. We tend to see the phenomena existing outside without having to depend on each other. So, therefore, when it's a good thing, we tend to see as absolutely good. When it is a bad thing, we tend to see the bad thing as absolutely bad. And so therefore, we tend to towards what we see as good and positive, and we tend to cultivate hatred and anger to those that we do not like and those that we tend to see as bad. So therefore we see the object of attachment as having independent existence and tend to see that they have an absolute existence from their own side, and they have such an existence from time immemorial. So therefore, when we refute the existence of self of phenomena, we are refuting the existence of such an independent self. So here when we refute the self of phenomena, our object of negation is an external object having independent existence. So externally existent phenomena is being refuted here. And phenomena can be subdivided as the five aggregates, material sense powers and elements. The physical aggregate sense powers and elements in ultimate sense are not separate from the aspects of the mind. That is their reality. And that means so long as there is a mind, then the sense powers, elements, and physical aggregates exist, and so long as there is no mind, no consciousness, these things also cannot exist. So, other than the nature of the mind, there is no external object. Provided if there is an external object independent from the mind, then in that case, this would amount to say that should be able to find the object if it is split into different parts. But the reality is such that when we try to split the different parts and directions of that particular object, then we are unable to find that object. This clearly shows that there is no objective existence, and that lack of objective existence means the lack of existence of an external object. This also do not imply that things do not exist at all. Things do exist, but when it is analyzed and investigated, we do not find that is the reality. This is due to the reason that when these are broken into subtle parts, particles, and then the identity of the parts, these subtle particles are also individually examined, no definite identity can be identified. Therefore, it is due to attachment to imperfect things like physical form, etc. From beginning this time that to children, the mind itself, from children refers to ordinary beings, the mind itself appears as separate and outside like a form. Similarly, in the way a form is observed in the make sure that you get protected from the heat of the sun. Think that the three walls are mere mind, and realizing that every phenomenon is meant in this way is their mind, and by analyzing their mind, it's individually examining the identity of all phenomena. As such, analyze the identity of the mind in this manner. So everything that we see and experience, everything that is existent is in the nature of the mind, and other than there is no external object. It is through this way that the phenomenon is established. So this also is similar to the point of mind also. In accordance with the teaching of the mind of the soul, what they are repeating is the external object. And out of the three categories of they accept the dependent they accept the other powered phenomena and thoroughly established phenomena as having inherent existence. So they accept the other powered phenomena as having independent existence, and likewise the other powered phenomena, empty of the artificial phenomena, is also accepted as having independent existence. And that will also be systematized, repeated here in the next paragraph, which says that in ultimate sense, the mind too cannot truly exist. So long as the mind grasps aspects of false entities like physical form, etc., and so long as the mind itself appears in various aspects, how can it be true? Just as physical form, etc., is false, mind too is false, because the mind also is not separate from that. That means the mind also does not have inherent or independent existence. Because even if you judge mind, you will find discrepancy about the way the mind appears and the way the mind actually exists. Just as physical form, etc., is in various aspects, and therefore not an entity of one or many, likewise the mind's identity too is neither one nor many, because it is not separate from physical form. Just as the physical form, etc., are false, likewise the mind which apprehends the physical form, etc., is also false. Therefore, the identity of the mind is only like an illusion, etc. Not only that, one analyzes by thinking that just as mind, the identity of all phenomena, is like mere illusion. In this way, the identity of the mind is individually examined by wisdom, and the ultimate sense is perceived neither within nor without. Because if you investigate and analyze the mind too cannot be found. when we examine physical form, we split it into key parts, and we split it into different directions. We cannot find it. When it refers to the investigation of the mind, of course the mind, being a non-physical form, has no direction, but we can again split the mind in terms of its moments, because it is momentary nature, and therefore the mind is something which is designated to collection, to an aggregate. So therefore, if such investigation of the mind will also not be found as having independent consciousness. It is because of this, here it says that in the ultimate sense, the mind too is not perceived, neither within nor without. It is also not perceived in the absence of both, neither the mind, the past, nor the future, or that the present is perceived. If you analyze the nature of that mind using the wisdom, it will not be able to withstand the analysis of the mind. It will not be able to withstand the investigation. Of course, there is a demarcation when we are entering into the investigation of the ultimate reality, or whether we are doing the ordinary examination. In accordance with the philosophy consultant inherited Christians, without being satisfied by the way things appear to oneself, to analyze whether they have an existence on their own side, then that is the meaning of examining the ultimate nature of mind. And also when the mind is formed, it comes from nowhere and it ceases to goes nowhere, because it is inapprehensible, undemonstrable, and non-physical. If one were to ask what is the entity of that which is inapprehensible, undemonstrable, and non-physical, it is as Arya Buddha accidentally mentions. O Kashyapa, the mind is thoroughly searched, it cannot be found. What is not found cannot be perceived, and what is not perceived is neither past nor future nor present. In such analysis, the beginningless of the mind is not ultimately seen, the end of the mind is not ultimately seen, and the center of the mind is not ultimately seen. All phenomena should be understood lacking an end and a center, just as the mind does not have an end or a center, the knowledge and the
लेकिन ऐसे विचार हो सकता है कि अब ठीक है भारी जो चीज जो है वो तो हम देख रहे हैं उसकी नाश होता है, वो टूट जाता है, फूट जाता है, हमारी मन की परिकल्पना से परे नहीं है। लेकिन क्या ये जो मन जो ये सभी चीज़ें को जानते हैं, देखते हैं, समझते हैं, तो ये भी क्या अपने आप में स्वाभाविक रूप से सत्य है? तो इसके परीक्षा करने
when the person does not ultimately see the identity of all phenomena through wisdom, he would not analyze whether physical form is permanent or impermanent. Conventionally, physical forms are of course impermanent. This is in tune with the reality. Empty or not empty, contaminated or non-contaminated, produced or unproduced, and existent or non-existent. This means both is permanent or impermanent, the case, etc., and is not found as having independent existence. Just as physical form is not present, similarly, feeling, recognition, composition, factors, and consciousness are not examined. When the object does not exist, its particularities also cannot exist. This means that through examination you do not find objects as having independent existence and find the lack of independent existence of the object, then the particularities of that object, which could also include the emptiness of that object as having no independent existence. For example, abstract object like physical form, etc. And then we should talk about the emptiness of that particular object, physical form. That is one way of looking at it. And then you can also take the emptiness of that object and you should examine it. And through such examination, you will find the emptiness of the form. So, when we say that through examination of the emptiness of the form, you find the emptiness of the emptiness of the form, that means that the emptiness of the form also do not have independent existence. So how can they be examined? In this way, when a yogi does not firmly grasp onto the identity of a thing as ultimately existing, having investigated with wisdom, then the yogi engages in non-conceptual single-pointed concentration, and thus identity-lessness of all phenomena is also realized. Therefore, to realize that emptiness also does not have independent existence is extremely important. In other words, it is extremely important to realize the emptiness of the emptiness. If you accept a particular object like a physical form as having no independent existence and realize its emptiness, if you accept the emptiness of that object as having independent existence, then you have entered in a very wrong philosophical view which can never be corrected. So therefore it is said in the text that if you see emptiness as having independent existence, then you stand in a path, mistaken path. Then from here it explains about the process of eliminating the unconceptual thoughts. Historically it is said that Kamala Silla was invited in accordance with the testament given by the abbot Shantarakshita. When Shantarakshita visited Tibet, then at that time, at different parts in the Sami monastery, there used to be different sections, housing different sections of scholars. There is a section where the translators used to do the work, and there is a section for the contact practitioners, and then there is another section which is called the place for engaging in the meditation. So at that time, it seems that there were people who were engaging in meditation in accordance with the correct teachings of Buddha. I say this because at that time, we read about Shantarakshita was sitting there, and this meditators doing meditation in his presence. Then subsequently, some of the followers of these meditators started practicing perhaps wrongly, in which they said that when you engage in meditation, you should stop all kinds of conceptual thoughts. You should engage in the meditation on nothingness. In other words, you should not let the mind reflect on any object. So that was a wrong conception, and in another conception, Kamala had a debate with the master of that section of meditators, and refuted it. So here the text says, those who do not meditate with wisdom by analyzing individually the entity of things, but merely meditate on eliminating mental activity cannot avoid conceptual thoughts. That means if you merely meditate on nothingness without letting your mind focus on any other object, that will not eliminate the wrong perceptions and affect emotions. Also, such meditators cannot realize identitylessness because they lack the light of wisdom, because they are engaging only stopping the conceptual thought, and other than this, they do not have the wisdom, which means the profundity of seeing the reality. So long as there is no light of wisdom, grasping of the self cannot be removed. The fire of consciousness, or suchness as it is produced from the individual analysis of suchness, and like the fire produced by rubbing wood, it will burn the wood of conceptual thought. The Buddha has said thus. Rajaratnam also mentions, those skilled in discerning the forms engage in the yoga of meditation on emptiness in order to get rid of all elaborations. Such a person, due to his repeated meditation on emptiness, when the identities of objects, where the mind is distracted or enchanted, are thoroughly searched, they are realized as empty. But that very mind is also excellent. In other words, the mind which is distracted towards the external object, if you examine the nature of that mind also, you will find that it came into existence by depending on many collection of many aggregates, and it is also realized as empty of independent existence. And when the identity of what is realized by this mind is thoroughly searched, this too is realized as empty. Realizing this way, one enters in the yoga of signlessness. The yoga of signlessness, one enters into the yoga of signlessness, not merely stopping the mental conceptual thought, but rather realizing the immanent existence of all phenomena, including the mind which is distracted towards the object. And what is realized or what is comprehended by the mind is also realized as no independent existence. So if you enter such a path, that is the path or the yoga of signlessness. So the yoga of signlessness refers to the signlessness of independent existence of all phenomena. So this shows that only those that have engaged in complete analysis can enter the yoga of signlessness. It has been explained very clearly that by mere elimination of mental activity without examining the identity of things with wisdom, it is not possible to engage in conceptuality. Thus, concentration is done after the actual identity of things, like physical form, etc., has been perfectly analyzed by wisdom, and not by abiding on physical form, etc. Concentration is also not done by abiding in between this world and the world beyond, because physical forms, etc., are not perceived. It is thus called non-abiding concentration. When you turn in the wisdom, you should withdraw the mind by getting distracted towards the physical form and let it analyze repeatedly on the object of concentration, which here is the ultimate truth. And then let the mind focus on the ultimate reality. That is the meaning of the concentration. So the concentration is not done by focusing on the physical forms. One is then called the meditator of supreme wisdom, because by individually examining the identity of all things through wisdom, one has perceived nothing. This is as stated in the Arya Grabanth and Arya Ratanaji, etc. So this means that we should analyze the ultimate reality or the ultimate nature of all phenomena, all objects, and through that way of investigation, you should free yourself from all elaborations and understand the level of inherent existence of all phenomena, and let your mind wisdom on such an ultimate reality. That's the meaning of meditation on the blossoming of the beautiful flowers and glimmering houses and temples that we see. In other words, everything that we see, if you try to find the object of meditation of all these phenomena, you will never be able to find it. As we have done in accordance, as we have investigated the nature of all phenomena, the Pacific Pandemic system, likewise, if you analyze phenomena, you will not find the external objects like likewise, if you analyze the same process, you will not find the mind also. This unfindability does not prove the non-existence of the external phenomena in the internal mind. And because if things do not exist, if we say that things do not exist at all, then that would contradict our negative experience. We do experience happiness, we do experience suffering, when in relation to certain external experiences. So this clearly shows that things do exist. Because things exist, they do not exist in the way we tend to see them. Because we tend to see things as independent, absolute existence. Things exist merely through the designation of our conceptual thought. Not being satisfied with this conceptual, with the designation of the conceptual thought, if you try to find an absolute existence, you will not be able to find that. This clearly shows the inherent existence of the phenomena. Therefore, things are merely designated by the mind, and if you are able to understand this, then you do not have to make a demarcation as a standard mind only school, which says that external objects do not have independent existence, but the mind has an independent existence. So therefore, according to the Parsanic Madhyamika school, there is a mind which is separate from the external object. And there is also a connection between the mind and the external object, etc. But whether it is the external object or the internal mind, all these things are inputted by the mind. All these things are designated by the mind. That is the reality. Even though this is the case, to our ordinary legal mind, we tend to see the external object and the internal mind as existence from on side. So when we see things in that way, that's the meaning of seeing things as having inherent existence, independent existence, existing by its own, absolute existence, and so forth. So such an existence is not there. So according to the Parsanic Madhyamika school, there is no difference in subtlety between the selflessness of the person and selflessness phenomena. So in accordance with this school of thought, the object of reputation is having
और
independent
इस तरह से
existence,
यहाँ तक
not
जो
being
चर्चा
designated
की
by the
गई
mind,
है
when you realize
उनके
the
भी
selflessness
सिद्धांत के
of
आधार
the
पर
person and
ये कहा
selflessness
गया
of the
है
phenomena,
कि
you
जिस तरह
realize
से
emptiness,
पहाड़ी विषय वस्तु
the
है
nature of all phenomena.
उनके स्वभाव से स्थित न होने की जो बात है वही जो सिद्धांत जो है वो उस विषय को ग्रहण करने वाले उससे जुड़ने वाले या उससे पहचानने वाले जो आत्मा है या ज्ञान है उस पर भी लागू होता है ऐसा कहा गया है। तो इसलिए यहाँ पर जो भारी जो विषय जो है वो मात्र हमारे अंदर की जो विषय को जानने वाले जो तत्व है उन्हीं का स्वरूप है ऐसा कहा गया है। लेकिन आगे जो प्रासंगिक जो माध्यमिक जो है उनके दर्शन इससे थोड़ा भिन्न है। उसके माने उनके दर्शन इस तरह से है कि जैसे कि हमारे जो भारी वास्तु की अपनी निरात्मा की अवस्था है जो वास्तव में स्वभाव से सिद्ध न होने की किसी दूसरे पर निर्भर न होने की या स्वतंत्र रूप से बनने गुजरने की जो सिद्धांत है वो तो गलत है ही। उसी तरह से हमारे जो आत्मा पर भी ज्ञान पर भी यही जो सिद्धांत लागू होता है। लेकिन मध्य प्राथमिक वैज्ञानिक जो है इसके दर्शन के अनुसार इसमें स्थूल या सूक्ष्म की कोई भेद नहीं होता है। दोनों ही निरात्मा धर्म निरात्मा और पुरुषार्थ निरात्मा जो है वो दोनों ही जो है वो एक ही तरह है। तो इसमें एक ज़्यादा सूक्ष्म है इसको जानने की अधिक इसमें मतलब कठिनाई होती है या इसको समझने में ज़्यादा आसान होगा ऐसा जो है वो प्रासंगिक माध्यमिक जो है वो मानता नहीं है। तो आगे जो है यहाँ पर इस पर जो है इस प्रासंगिक माध्यमिक की लक्षण क्या है उसे जानने की आवश्यकता है।
It is not possible to find Vishuddha if you isolate his psychophysical aggregates. Vishuddha should be found only at the place where his psychophysical aggregates are found. Even though this is the case, but if you search Vishuddha starting from the crown of his head down to the sole of his feet, you will not find Vishuddha. Likewise, you can split the different layers of consciousness in the mind of Vishuddha. You will not be able to find Vishuddha. So therefore, Vishuddha is not found at all through such analysis. Normally to our ordinary mind, when we talk about my body and my mind, we tend to think that there is an I who enjoys this mind and this body, and therefore this I is separate. But in reality, there is no such isolated existence the psychophysical aggregate. So therefore, in reality, Vishuddha is something which is merely designated on the collection of the psychophysical aggregate. Other than this, you will not be able to find independent existence which is in control with the owner of the psychophysical aggregate of Vishuddha. The South masters like our Vivekas, they are not satisfied with the level of appearance only. Entered into deeper analysis and try to find out Vishuddha, and finally they come to the conclusion that finally they put forth a certain mind and said that such mind is Vishuddha. But that is not accepted in because that mind is something which is controlled by the person and is uncontrolled. The controller are not the same. So therefore it is not convenient to accept the particular of the mind as the example of the person or mind. So according to the evidence school, I and the person is designated by the terms. So there is an I, and if you go on trying to find that I, you will not find it. So this leads to the conclusion that what is being designated by the name of the person has to be accepted as existing. An example is that, for example, if you mistake a coil of rope as a snake, and then later if you try to find the snake on the coil of rope, you will not be able to find the snake either on the collection of that rope or apart from that coil of rope. Likewise, if you try to find the eye, either in the collection of the psychophysical aggregate or in the parts of the psychophysical aggregate, you will never be able to find it. But there is a difference between these two points. In the case of seeing the coil of rope as a snake, not only you do not find a snake in the coil of rope, also you cannot designate the coil of rope as a snake because that would contradict the conventional mode of accepting information. So the conclusion is that a person or a mind is merely designated relating to the psychophysical aggregate. So the I and the person that exist through the power of consciousness and through the power of chance. So the I or the person not only is dependent on causes and conditions, and not only dependent on the parts, but it's also dependent on the designation of the mind. So therefore it is said that the nature of the person arising. Therefore, Sixteenth already is designated and also has dependent relation. And we say it has an existence dependent relation. Then this clearly shows its existence because it has existed by depending on something else. And what is dependent and what is independent are mutually exclusive and opposite. One cannot be both. So therefore, things are dependent things do not have independent existence, and therefore this is about lack of existence, lack of independent existence, lack of existence from its own side. So therefore we use the reason that things like inherent existence or independent existence because they are dependent on minds, because they have dependent nature. Also put it in the other way around. That means we can say that independent it's also decisions and thoughts. If things are independent, then they do not have to depend on causes and conditions, and they do not have to depend on names because it is independent. And if it is independent, then it should not be dependent on parts. So therefore, if things have independent existence, they do not have a related existence. And since things do not have independent existence, they are in the nature of dependent relation. So therefore, these are the two sides of the same hand, or two sides of the same coin. Negative independent existence is the one side, and because of independent existence, it is dependent, and it is dependent on cause conditions, and because of this dependency, we have this multifarious existences and multifarious aspects. Because things are constant, various ways of existence and multiple ways of multiple parts and aspects lead to independent. So such reflections will help us in realizing the ultimate nature. Any object, excellent object, say happiness, all this comes from depending on different factors, and if you are able to realize this, then you can stop unnecessary sufferings which are a result of unnecessary attachment. Since things are designated as this is the power of designation, there are such qualities and you can head towards those, and there are also something, and you can also if you are able to realize this, the importance is that on the one hand, good qualities like compassion, and so forth, because we accept the existence or the nominal existence of things. At the same time, such realization will help us stop the arisal of attachment and anger and so forth, because attachment, anger, etc. arises by seeing things as 100% attractive or 100% distasteful and so forth. And we tend to see something as 100% attractive and 100% distasteful when we see things as having independent existence. And when we see the level of independent existence, attachment, anger, etc. do not arise. So therefore, it is extremely important to realize these two sides of the same coin, which in fact has the same meaning. I think this is perhaps the meaning that is explained in the Bhagavad Mathematical School. Of course, I cannot say that what I have explained to you is completely unmistaken. The Madhyamika Avatara, Chandrapurita says that even at the conventional level, if you accept independent inherent existence, then this would amount to say that the visible superior destroys the existence of all phenomena and so forth. So therefore, using the reason of dependent relation,
और अभी उनके आत्मा जो है
inherent existence is recruited even at the conventional level or even at the nominal level. Provided you are able to think in a wise and skillful way, then this expression given by the personified Devi has a very profound meaning. If you are unable to do that, then that's why that having a good inherent resistance, even if the conditions are you will not be able to present the independent arising of phenomena.
और इस तरह से जैसे कि आचार्य संसारा में
Having established the two superpositions, either based on the orthodox or based on the cosmic one should establish the special insight realizing emptiness and suchness. In order to establish that, we must have the philosophical view of emptiness. This is explained here in the text by saying that in this way, one that has entered in the suchness of the selflessness of our phenomena is free from concept and analysis, because there is nothing to be thoroughly examined and observed. One is free from expression, and with one pointed mental engagement, one automatically enters in meditation without manifest discrimination. We were engaging in the practice of cultivation of abiding meditation. We were using the mind to enable it focus on the object, one pointedly, without engaging in any analysis and observation. When we engage in the specialist side, then we also use analysis and observation, and here also if your investigation and analysis is obstructed by mental laxity and excitement, you should also remove that, as you have done in the case meditating on calm abiding meditation. Thus one very clearly meditates on suchness and abides in it, and while abiding in that meditation, the mind should not be distracted. And when the mind is distracted to outside objects due to attachment, etc., such distraction should be noted. One should quickly specify the distraction by meditating on the repulsive side of the object and swiftly replace the mind on suchness. If the mind is disinclined to meditation, then by seeing the advantages of single-pointed concentration, meditate to enjoy it. The disinclination should also be thoroughly specified by seeing the effects of distraction as well. If the function of the mind becomes unclear and starts sinking, or when there is fear of sinking due to being overpowered by mental torpor or sleep, then as before, quickly attempt to discard sinking by focusing the mind on supremely delightful things. Then the object of suchness should be held very tightly. At times, when the mind is also to be excited or tempted by distraction, by the memory of past events or laughter and play, then as in the earlier cases, specify this distraction by reflecting on things like impermanence, etc., which helps to calm the mind. Then I can endeavor to engage the mind on suchness without applying compromises. And when the mind is spontaneously engaged in meditative equipoise on such needs free of thinking and mental agitation, at that time it should be left naturally, left to abide naturally, and all efforts should be relaxed. If effort is applied when the mind is in meditative equipoise, it will distract the mind, but if effort is not applied when the mind becomes calm, when the mind becomes calm, it becomes like a blind man who due to extreme darkness will then not penetrate inside. So when the mind becomes dumb, apply effort, and when in absorption, effort should be relaxed. When by meditating on meditative insight, excessive experience is prevented, and the calm abiding is weak, then the mind will waver like a battle lamb in the wind, and one will then not perceive suchness very clearly. Once one has achieved insight and by engaging in that analytical meditation, and in fact, through the power of analytical meditation, it is induced for abiding. In the initial stage, one has to meditate on calm abiding meditation, because at that level, if you engage in too much analysis, that will disturb mental concentration and stability. And once you have achieved calm abiding meditation, and once you have, and after that, when you have achieved spiritual insight, then through the power of that spiritual insight, you will also be able to achieve calm abiding. So regarding the actual meditation, it should be guided properly by an experienced Lama. So because depending upon the intelligence of the practitioner, and also depending upon the age of the practitioner, the teacher of the Lama could suggest different ways of practice meditation. Therefore, at that time, meditation is calm abiding. At that time, meditate on calm abiding. When calm abiding meditation becomes excessive, meditate on wisdom. When engaged equally in both types of meditation, stay without any activity as long as there is no harm brought to the body and mind. If the body exercises hard, see the whole world like an illusion, a mirage, a dream, a reflection, and mind and think that certain beings are very confused inside this existence due to not understanding such profound Dharma knowledge. Earlier, if you have meditated on the nature of all phenomena as an illusion, then there is no need to do a separate meditation on the like nature of all phenomena. Because earlier during the meditative was the mind or the wisdom has ascertained that things are not yet imprisoned as it appears to the mind. So even in the second stage of meditation, when things appear as inherent existence, and through the power of meditative pause, through the power of meditation that you have done through using the wisdom, you will not see, you will not trust the appearance. It is through this way that you will be able to see everything that appears to your mind as in the nature of an illusion. And of course, this example is seeing the whole world like an illusion, mirage, a dream, a reflection, and so forth, can be interpreted in different ways depending upon different procedures of mechanics. So it is not necessary for you to give the same interpretation at every time when you see the examples of illusion, mirage, and so forth. Some Prabhupada said that it is not wise to pick up one grain of place and say that this is a heap of rice. So similarly, whenever you encounter the word illusion, It's not necessary for you, or you should not interpret that in the not necessary to interpret it always in accordance with the Pacifica Madhyamika school. So even in the case of ultimate truth, the term ultimate is used in various levels. Ultimate in the sense of attainment, ultimate in the sense of achievement, ultimate in the sense of objective reality, and so forth. So one should interpret or explain the meaning of this particular word with reference to that particular context and with reference to that particular philosophical school. And also the term ultimate refers to both to the object of interpretation and also to the object of realization. So there is, because of this, frequently and now the sapiens do not have ultimate existence. So that refers to the object of realization. And at the same time, we also say that the wisdom realizing experiences is understood ultimate truth. So the term ultimate can be interpreted and has different meanings in different contexts. So such distinctions must be made with referring to the context. Then you should manifest great compassion and altruistic thought for the people, thinking that I shall earnestly endeavor to help and understand such matters. Then take some rest. Likewise, engage in single-pointed concentration on all phenomena as non-appearing. With the understanding of dependent relation, you get an understanding about the possibilities of removing the sufferings and the emotions of sentient beings, and thereby the possibilities of getting rid of the cycle existence. And based on such realization, you cultivate great compassion. Likewise, if the mind feels very sad, take some rest. This is the path engaging in the union of calm abiding and